Hi, welcome to the 15-Minute Patriot. I'm your guest host, David Saad, joined by Ms. Deborah Griffin, Mr. Ross Maher, and Dave Wilder. And this is my last show sitting here. Hopefully you guys are going to invite me from Florida.
You will definitely be.
Okay. Yes. You say that definitely, but I have a sneaking suspicion. It's going to be Dave Saad who?
Well, we're hoping that we can control the virtual Dave more than we can control the actual Dave.
The live Dave.
The power of mute.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, that call dropped. On
a more humorous note, the shirt you're wearing, I will not comply. I have a merch account. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, I'm able to sell stuff on Amazon, okay? And it's called the merchant account, and I put up T-shirts that I designed. So I designed one that said, "I will not comply with the snake that was designed in the." Okay. What do you think Amazon did?
They won't let you sell it.
They will not let me sell it because it said that I ripped it off from somebody else. I said that is a public domain image.
Yeah, that's national history.
Yeah, the snake. You know what? I will not comply. You can't copyright that.
It's like live free or die.
Well, for those of you who might be a little confused, welcome to the 15-Minute Patriot.
Yes. Okay. and so, anyways, I got the letter from Mr. Wilder here about has anybody ever Googled the Article 5 of the Constitution? So when you Google it, it's like buried. Convention of States. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, the 15-Minute Patriot is all about getting people to spend 15 minutes a month to contact their state legislators to promote freedom and liberty. And that's going to be through promoting an Article 5 state convention. And as a little exercise this week, I asked, gee, what happens when Joe Citizen is looking for information about an Article 5 convention and they want to talk to a group that is pro-Article 5? So I Googled pro-Article 5 groups. I got Common Cause, which is against it. I got John Birch Society, which is against it. I got Wikipedia, which described the Article 5 process ad nauseum. And maybe in the second page, I got Convention of States, which is a bona fide group. Yeah. So I'm curious, have you ever had that experience?
Yes. Yes. I don't want to say the exact experience. And I have tried to completely de-Google my life.
Right.
And I actually looked up online how to de-Google my life. Because I had gotten a new phone and it was just like Google everything. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so
I mean, you can do Alexa or Siri. I mean, the same thing happens.
Yeah, so I generally use DuckDuckGo.
I do too.
On my phone, especially.
And on my computer.
So I found on my computer was a little bit more difficult, but that's beside the point. To kind of second what you're saying, yeah, it is difficult to find, other than the Convention of States project at conventionofstates.com, it's very difficult to find any type of an organization. It seems like unless you know the specific name already, and you're searching for that specific organization, you're not going to find anything kind of on that initial layer, if you will, of the internet. Where
the search is diverted.
Yeah.
Common Cause basically overtakes every search. I found the same thing.
Yeah.
So obviously the question is, what's happening out there? I mean, do we live in a society where information is transparent and readily available, or is it controlled?
It's controlled.
Completely controlled.
I mean, this experiment says it's controlled.
Yeah.
Completely.
Now, I do. Speaking of which, though, I as I was doing prep for the show, I did come across an article out of Kansas. So just as a quick recap from the last legislative year, of the many states that had introduced legislation to call for an Article 5, Kansas was one of them. Kansas has I'll say a rule in their constitution that talks about anything specific to constitutional amendments and some voting, basically 2/3 voting requirements. Yeah. And so the ultimate point, so now a lawsuit has now ensued that has been started by a couple of representatives from Kansas, basically saying that this Kansas constitutional requirement it is unconstitutional in comparison to the U.S. Constitution. So that's going to get litigated over time. Yeah. So, which could make Kansas number 20 potentially that would have passed the call for a Convention of States.
I had asked earlier, does anybody know if Florida is already signed on?
I thought that they were.
I believe so.
I'd have to go to conventionofstates.com and check out their progress map to be sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because there had been, several years ago, there were, I want to say maybe 5 or 6 states that had rescinded their call. And of course, Common Cause is always like right there to brag about that. We got them rescinded.
Yeah.
Colorado, oddly enough,
Wow.
was one of them, but I don't remember the others.
But yeah, on a previous show we discussed this, that you need 34 states to call a convention. And at any given time in our history, if we had 34 states call for a convention, Congress has to call it. And we've had that happen, meaning that we've had the 34 states, but Congress didn't do their job. That doesn't mean, even years later when these states rescind it, it doesn't mean that you ignore it.
Sure.
Because at the time, we had the 34 states. So there is activity in place to pursue that line with Congress as well.
Dave, can you, for those individuals that may not have seen the show or aren't familiar with it, I found it very interesting, and it helped me understand about Convention of States, how that works when, because Congress has not a great reputation for doing the right thing. So 34 states call a convention. How much influence does Congress have on the actual thing?
Zero. Absolutely
That's
zero.
that's the point I'm trying to.
For people that might not be familiar, the U.S. Constitution, Article 5, talks about 2 ways to propose an amendment. We've only used one way, where Congress proposes it, and there's been thousands that Congress has proposed, but it's really hard to get going. The second path is if we get 34 states, or 2/3, right? 2/3 of the states, which is 34 now, to call for a convention, Congress calls the convention. That's all they do. They can't say anything else. It happens. In fact,
They can't vote on it. They can't do an inquiry. They can't do all of these.
There's constitutional scholars that say if the states submit 34 applications to Congress, the states can say, "Oh, it's called." So there is some constitutional dialogue there.
Let me shift gears for a moment on this to kind of maybe bring this in somewhat of a different context. Right now, to emphasize this point of the lack of role that the federal government has, or Congress in particular, look into what's going on with the Colorado River right now. There is, I don't want to say a dispute, but with water levels dropping, it's affecting, of course, California thinks that they should be getting all the water, but the Colorado River actually affects 7 different states. I was kind of surprised to see some of them. I was like, wow, I didn't think the Colorado River went up that high. But it's another river that feeds the Colorado, and so my point ultimately is access to clean, safe drinking water is becoming a major issue in Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, California. There's another river that apparently originates in Wyoming but feeds into the Colorado River. So all these 7 states are actually tied together in this issue. The federal government has no role to play in how these states ultimately conclude or come to agree.
Are they going to call a state convention?
Oh, possibly there could be a convening of states that have a vested interest in this issue.
There you go.
And our country has a very long history, even prior to the revolution, of, hey, we have a common issue that we need to discuss. Let's meet, let's work it out, let's vote on it, let's come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons that prevented us from moving to Arizona, because I love Arizona. I loved it out there. I played ball out there for years. I loved it. Great place, but my concern was drinking water.
And it's going to become an increasing problem.
Yeah. And that, you see, climate change and all the one thing I will say that we have to be concerned about is our water supply.
Absolutely.
And this whole thing about CO2, I don't want to get off into that. They are so missing the mark about CO2 that if we didn't have CO2, and right now that level is dropping, if we don't have CO2, we lose our trees, we lose our vegetation, which gives us oxygen to breathe. Okay? And it also helps with farming. So, and that has dropped. The CO2 output has dropped. Anyway.
Well, so let's shift gears back to our homework assignment.
That's a good example where we can talk about democracy, and we have elements of democracy and our republic, but we are a federal republic. And so things like this, where you have individuals and regions that have conflicting issues, I mean, that's where federalism really comes into play, in that the region should be represented fairly. So California can't override Arizona and
One state, one vote.
Right. That's it.
Right. So that's the beauty of our founders creating the system where we can, find liberty and freedom for all of us, no matter where you live.
So what was the reason? Or do they have any reason why it's dropping, the Colorado River?
There are multiple reasons as to why.
Yeah.
One of those being that they cited record low snowfall.
Yeah, I was gonna say snowfall.
So those areas rely on that snow melt coming out of Wyoming as an example to feed that river for months and months on end. That's one of many things. Like most things, there's seldom there's seldom one thing that's causing a particular problem.
Yeah.
There's layers to it for sure.
Well, in looking for groups, who is for an Article 5 convention? So like we just mentioned federalism.
Right.
There's a group, and you can look it up online. We'll have links to all these things at the end of the show. Article5caucus.com. One of the guys there is Ken Ivory, very active representative in Arizona. That whole group is promoting federalism. And their purpose in having an Article 5 convention is to shore up laws and create an amendment that would give more strength to the federal structure of our government. Just one group. Have you found other groups in your searches?
I did I?
No.
All right. So let me put on my reading glasses so I can actually read. I followed a couple of the links that you had sent out, which will be posted at the end of the show. But Bill of Financial Responsibilities Project is kind of an interesting one that really focuses in on financial related things. And so they've identified 5 financial problem areas that they also, and this is what I like, they also have recommendations on how to fix, right? So they're just not complaining, they're providing a solution as well. So quickly, I'll just run down the top 5. So number 1 is taxation, number 2 is spending, number 3 is accounting or the accountability side of things, number 4 was the regulations, and number 5 kind of a dual-headed thing, both Social Security and Medicare kind of all connected into one.
That's John Ramsey, right? That's John Ramsey's group, I think?
I believe so, yes.
Is there a petition on that webpage?
I really just spent majority of the day understanding what their 5 key points were and really what their solutions were. But ultimately, they are pursuing the Article 5 route. So I would be rather shocked if there wasn't some type of petition signing mechanism in there.
I think that one is kind of unique in that I believe his name is John Ramsey. He's gone ahead and gotten constitutional scholars together and actually wrote for those 5 amendments. So this is ready to go.
And I did look at the second one, if you don't mind. What was the second one on the list?
CampaignConstitution.com.
CampaignConstitution.com. I went to their website as well. There's a lot of data there. They too have taken the time to write multiple proposals. So as you bust out your handy dandy Constitution, you'll have articles, sections, and then clauses, right? So they have a lot of clauses under one particular general idea, and it reads very much like how the Constitution did as well. But I did find some interesting things with the Financial Responsibilities Project. Any guess on how big our tax code is? Pages. Give me a page count.
40,000.
That's one, Dave.
I was going to say something like around 25,000
What do you think, Dave?
pages.
Without looking at my notes.
No, I can't see it anyway. I took my glasses
So we
off.
have 40,000. We have 20,000.
I'll say 30.
30. So these guys here say it's 75,000 pages. And so one of the many points that they bring up is not only is the tax code so just ridiculously large, it's ridiculously complex. It lends itself to corruption. I'll just read it right here. It is complex, secretive, corrupt, confusing, and unfair. At
course it is.
75,000 pages, I have to
All of it.
Yeah,
Of
the whole
course
thing.
it is.
So they also purport that 47% of citizens, as well as 20% of large profitable companies, pay no federal taxes at all. So I thought that was kind of interesting, because then it reminded me, and I know several of us here, we've been involved in different businesses of different kinds.
Yes.
But a phrase that sticks out in my mind is that businesses don't pay income taxes, people do. So, so large businesses that are publicly traded, the shareholders pay taxes based off of income that they come. So, I'm not a tax professional. But I own an LLC.
Corporations are considered an individual when it comes to taxation. So
There you go.
Right.
yeah. So,
But do they pay taxes?
Oh yeah. Well,
Allegedly, 20% of them don't,
yes.
Yeah.
whether they're profitable or not.
Yeah.
And I'll just run down these really quick. So they talked a lot about spending problems that we have, and we just keep borrowing more and more and more money. Annual budget for our government hovers right around $4 trillion. And then I found another interesting anecdote and I was kind of surprised at this, that the LBJ, right, was adamant about keeping the annual budget at or below $100 billion. I actually found this on the second website that I was looking at. And I didn't want to get too much into that, but I was like, okay, that's interesting. But the point that they were trying to bring up is even though he was a Democrat, and even though we expanded all kinds of governmental programs, landed dudes on the moon, the point that they were trying to bring up is we accomplished a lot of things, but somehow we managed to keep the national budget somewhere around $100 billion.
Yeah.
And now here we are within the last, let's call it 40 years, not quite 40. We're well into the trillions at this point.
Our
Just shows you
debt is
how
$33 trillion.
Right.
Mega Fed, our previously coined term
Yeah.
to describe our government, has just grown so much.
I mean, there's other groups out there.
I did look at.
But
sorry, I
Convention of
failed to
States,
remember the name of it, but I did look at Convention of States, and they do have a petition that you can sign, and it goes into a lot of information about Article 5, and it was very informative. The other one was countermans.us. And I did look at it briefly, and I tried to read through it, but I got lost at a certain point.
Yeah. So,
But very interesting.
I mean, we promote Convention of States on this
Yes.
show. That's passed in 19 states. It does have a petition, so encourage everybody to sign that petition. What else is out there? So, www.termlimits.com.
Oh, yes.
Can you guess what that's about?
I have no idea.
Yeah. So, but again, if you search for pro Article 5 groups, you won't find it.
Yeah.
You've got to know to look at termlimits.com. And Nick Tambolidis is the executive director there, and he was the one that testified to Congress so well.
That name, yeah.
Yeah, so he is very articulate, very great speaker. Again, term limits are essential in preserving what the republic was supposed to be like.
And as we've said before, 83% of the country, is it 83%, agree with term limits, or
It's
would
a big
like
number.
to
It's
have.
certainly
It's
over
a big number.
75%, yeah.
Right.
I
I'm
think
pretty
the-
sure it was 83%.
The big question, maybe you know this, but if you don't, I want you to look it up. And that is, how long does a person have to serve in Congress before they can collect their fat salaries for the rest of their life? 1 year. 1 term or 1 year?
1 day.
1 day.
And then they're pensioned for life.
Yeah.
Their pension at their salary that they collected.
So interestingly enough, on that second, again, let me just look at
Right.
this one right here
I was
real
just gonna
quick.
say that.
Campaignconstitution.com. One of the several proposals that they had spoke to this specific thing. And not only basically they talked about it from different angles. One of them, so they have health care that is paid for completely by the government, right? One of the clauses, I guess you would call it, basically said, we're not paying for your health care anymore, unless everybody has it.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, yeah. So so I kind of say it like that for a reason, and the reason is this: is that these different organizations that are proposing different amendments and clauses, I mean, you really got to pay attention to what it is that they're saying, because I found that several of the clauses of the many, and I want to say they had probably the better part in just quick memory, maybe like 10 proposed amendments with bunches of clauses underneath them.
So again, with all these groups, like term limits,
Yeah.
I mean, you can sign that petition. I sign that petition. They have ideas. They all have a philosophy of bringing forward. But once the Article 5 state convention occurs, it's a debate time.
Yeah.
It's a committee meeting saying what works best. And I assure you, John Ramsey's fiscal responsibility 5 amendments, our term limit proposals and comments, they're all going to be on the table for discussion, and they will be changed based on what people want.
Yeah.
So
And
go ahead.
that's pretty much where Convention of States brings this all together, from my perspective anyway. It really, should the convention get to the three quarters, 34 states,
Yeah.
and the convention is called, these 3 key issues pretty much are the, fragmented
term limits,
pieces.
government
term
overreach,
limits,
and fiscal
right.
responsibility. Yeah.
So that's all on the table.
Yeah, but there's other groups like the Wolf Pack, which is very popular, very big. Their sole concern is financial reform of campaign finance reform.
Your favorite topic?
That's my favorite topic, because I think, and I got into a huge battle with my one person in the family. My oldest daughter was kind of liberal, except when it comes to her money. Okay.
Yeah.
That's usually how it works.
And I had happened to say, one thing I'd love to see is that the government fund all the campaigns. Our tax dollars fund. You're running for president, you get $200,000 to your campaign. That's it. That's all you get. And so on down the line. You can scale
Figure
it
it
down
out.
however you want to do it.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to be talking more about what your policies are, rather than just using money
Personal
to hire some
tax.
slick ad agency to make your opponent look like a fool.
Sure.
And wasting all, because we're talking billions of dollars that are spent.
It's crazy money, and it's easy to understand why people are kind of losing confidence in it. I mean, I just saw something that the Republican Party has spent $100 million prior to the Iowa caucus.
Yeah.
So this isn't even a general election.
No.
This is just a caucus.
This morning, I heard that Nikki Haley, I guess in this last quarter, so they're doing their quarterly reporting, pulled in $24 million. That's
And,
what.
and a lot of her money is coming from the other side of
Yeah.
the aisle. They
That's
really-
what, and that's the other part of it that everyone really has to be aware of. The dark money and the money coming from the other side to, put the opponents down. That's not okay. That's just not the way it's supposed to work.
No.
I believe it was New Hampshire. It might
Yes.
have been Vermont, but New Hampshire, 90% of the money going into the last general election was coming from outside the state.
And
So
Georgia, the
who
same
are-
thing.
who are they
Georgia, the same
representing?
thing.
Georgia, the
Yeah.
same thing.
Who are they representing?
Right.
So
And why?
to get people back to our representative government, we need to get that money out of the election process.
How far, we were talking about this in the car, Dave and I, how far we haven't come all these years.
Right.
400 years, or however many years.
Right.
How far we have not come.
Right.
And it's sick. The only thing that Dave said is missing is the king.
That's right.
But
You're right.
that king or that tyrant is now an organization, in my opinion, known as a Democrat organization. I'm sorry, but
Well, I think you can put all the politicians in the swamp,
the
Yep.
swamp.
The
okay?
bureaucrats
But
in D.C.
they're doing things that they're dying to ignite and have a war. They really are. I mean,
Absolutely.
Why are they doing? I mean, why they're trying to separate us on every single issue? Pretty soon they're going to be separating us on the foods we eat, the choice of what we decide to.
That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah.
They're trying to close down the small. Look at, there's theft. I mean, they're locking up. I went to CVS in Somerset.
Everything
and they're
is locked.
locking up fake fingernails,
Yeah.
glue-on nails. I'm like, are you kidding me
It's
right now?
insane.
I
can't afford it.
Where am I living here? Where am I living? In Russia? Like, this was not America.
Yeah.
But that's one theory that I heard, and I thought, you know what? Makes a lot of sense, very logical. Get rid of all the mom and pop stores, get rid of all this brick and mortar, so that you're doing everything online and big government can watch every transaction you're making.
Because why are they allowing it to happen?
Right.
The purpose of government is to grow.
Yeah.
To gain more authority, more control.
And all
more
of this
money.
border crossing in Texas, and they don't want you shipping them to Chicago or New York. You know they want to turn that state red, blue.
So
it's a red
you
state,
bring
and they
up-
want to turn it blue.
You both bring up a real sore point with me. I've come to the conclusion. And that is, I can no longer defend the police. I can't. They're not doing their job. They're not.
Go ahead, finish
you gotta
your
fight here.
Let me finish. Let me finish my theory.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the border, all right? You know that that's unconstitutional what's going on down there. Yet, as a border agent, you're listening to these clowns and you're actually helping them break the Constitution, whereas you should say, no, we're not letting them in. It's against the law. I swore an oath. I took an oath.
And you get fired.
And you get
Right.
fired.
It's just like the teacher or the nurse or the soldier
Right.
who
Yeah.
says, if you don't get a vax,
you lose your livelihood.
But that was okay for a bunch of farmers to pick up a pitchfork and put their lives on the line because they were being overtaxed and not represented.
Yeah. We don't have a lot of time left. I wanted
No,
to bring
we
up
don't.
one
Go
more.
ahead.
Huntforliberty.com is a great site for general education. And Mike Capek kind of heads that. And he has put out a book, The Conventions That Made America, which I strongly recommend. And it goes into how America used to work. You know, those over 600 conventions that created America. And so I would encourage people to get into that because there is hope.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a lot. We don't need to have Molotov cocktails in the back of our car ready to throw at somebody.
That would be fun.
Says the ex-military guy.
So I queued up a YouTube video the other day. I'm like, I gotta go get my wife, and it was a setup of 4 Gatling guns around a little turret. And when they were shooting it at nighttime, it was like a fire-breathing dragon. It was amazing.
But there was no Budweiser associated
No
with this.
Budweiser associated with it.
They were
It was
just-
just, I was like, I went to my wife. I was like, I think it's cool. I don't know if you will or not. So she came down. She's like, it's pretty wild. Anyway.
No, it's frustrating though, and I think this country we're really in a bad way.
We're back.
And unless something changes drastically, and just to one more point, the frustration is beyond. I listen to Hannity and I listen to Newsmax, Fox, different conservative outlets, Breitbart. 3 years we've been dealing with this complete and utter tyranny in our White House, and you've got the spokesperson coming out saying that it's Trump's fault from 3 years ago. When is it going to stop? And now they want to impeach. What are you impeaching? You don't even have 10 months left.
We have this.
Stupid.
We're down to 14 seconds. Go ahead.
We have the same hope that the Patriots had back in 1770s.
I sure hope so.
And that is the power of we the people. So if we all spend 15 minutes a month, sign up for one of these groups, get involved, let your state legislature know that you're watching and you're concerned. And
In Massachusetts, it's Bill 3541. Ask for their support. It's just like them asking for your vote. Ask for their support on this bill. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time through Zoom.
okay.